10 days, 10 days, 10 days. You hear that a lot in my office. And there's a 10-day rule, and it's really, really important. What does that mean? Well, number one, when we do a hair transplant and we place the grafts into the recipient sites and they're delicately placed and they fit snug, they're not permanent for 10 days. The first couple days is you have to be the most careful to make sure that the grafts don't get dislodged. But at 10 days, they're like your permanent hair. And usually after 10 days, you can go back to normal activities in regards to your recipient area, and you don't risk losing the graft. So 10 days until they're permanent. What else does 10 days mean? Well, when you're having a hair transplant, I tell patients that the donor area and the recipient area will look like you've had something done for approximately 10 days. Now, there's slight variations, but 10 days is usually the rule. Now, in the donor area, especially when we do an FUE procedure, the redness fades, the swelling goes down. At 10 days, any remaining scabs can be washed away, and the donor area doesn't really look noticeable that you've had something done. You can see an example of one of our patients who had a robotic FUE, and you can see immediately after the procedure and 10 days later, very hard to notice that you've had something done. You can get a haircut to blend everything in as well. Also in the recipient area, you could see immediately after the procedure it's red, you could see the grafts, it's inflamed. 10 days, doesn't look noticeable. You can go back to work, go back to social situations, shouldn't look noticeable at that point. Another example is someone who had a beard transplant. So when you transplant to the face, there's swelling, there's bruising, there's scabbing. That tends to fade by 10 days. Any remaining scabs, once again, can be washed away. You can see at 10 days, patient looks normal, actually looks even much better in terms of the hair that's been transplanted. Now that will shed and it'll eventually grow back in after several months, but you could see 10 days is really the important timeline. So 10 days, grafts are permanent. 10 days, recipient donor area should look pretty much back to like you haven't had a procedure. So that's really important to keep in mind when you're thinking about having a hair transplant procedure.